Now local elections, as those are starting to heat up out there after spring break, and as we get closer and closer to Election Day. And joining me in studio to discuss his reelection bid for Lubbock City Council, Councilman Jim Gerlt. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good, Chad. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Appreciate you coming in today. Let's talk about your reelection campaign and why you decided to run for reelection.
Several reasons. One, job's not done. 4 years ago when I was running, I talked about trying to find the least painful way to finance city government, and that's what I've really worked on. Tried to maintain a balance between property taxes and taking care of what we have. You know, I'm a conservative, and we've not done a good job of conserving a lot of the infrastructure that we have. So a lot of that has been deteriorating. One of the big campaign issues 4 years ago was deferred maintenance. So we've worked hard to keep the tax rate low. In fact, we've got the seventh lowest property tax rate in the state now, but we're the 11th largest city. So you would think we'd be the 11th lowest. We're not. We're the 7th lowest. We've worked to do a lot of deferred maintenance, take care of that. Debt was a big issue coming into the campaign. Well, I'm happy to report for the last 4 years, we have held debt level. The prior decade, our debt load continued to increase. We've leveled it off the last 4 years, and I'm very proud to report to you that $89.5 million worth of debt will be paid off this year. So we're making some progress there in that front. Part of the campaign 4 years ago was about the hidden taxes, hidden fees, franchise fees. One of the things that I've been able to do, and I authored this amendment last time, was we lowered franchise fees by 1%. Now LP&L was already 5%, the rest were 6%. We got it down 1%. Put that on the front end on the property tax side. Mm-hmm. Franchise fees not deductible. Property tax is. If you have a $200,000 home, we raised your property tax about $2.60 a month. But by doing that, then we didn't have to do as many transfers from the water department, for example. We've been able to lower then the base rate on water meters, and I brought the motion passed to lower it from 18 to 16. In fact, 4 years ago, when I went on the council, the base rate for your water meter, for the smallest water meter, was $28. Today it's $16. We've enabled people to take better control over their water bill. Now the rates for the consumption has changed a little bit. We're trying to encourage conservation. But it was before you used a drop of water, you had a $28 water bill. So I think that's very positive. So the $2.60 we were increasing your taxes by, we've taken at least $2 off of your water rates. By lowering the franchise fees, we were also able to cash fund $1.5 million, $1.6 million in capital improvement projects instead of bond funding them for 10 years. We were able to cash fund $400,000 worth of vehicle purchase instead of bond funding them or buying them on credit card for several years. So that's some of the things that we've been doing, and I want to continue that work to try and get things more open and transparent. 4 years ago, the council was in disarray. City manager and the city council were at conflict. We've got that resolved. We're working well with our city staff. 4 years ago, the relationship between LP&L and the city of Lubbock was not good, to say the least. And we were on a collision course with additional debt on building another power plant that would only be used part-time. Well, we've cleaned that mess up. We've got an LP&L board that's functioning very, very well, working great with the city. We're now working to get into ERCOT, which is the right thing to do. So I want to see us continue. We're not in ERCOT yet. There's some political landmines to avoid.
Right.
And it's important that we have experience going forward in dealing with that. Those are just some of the reasons. I'll also tell you this. The last thing the city of Lubbock needs is to have 4 new council members elected at one time. That would be a shock to the system. We know there'll be at least 2 because seats 1 and 2 are open seats. Don't know what will happen on the mayor's race. I don't know if Mr. Klein, Mr. Hernandez, they've been on the council before. Mr. Pope or Mr. Gutierrez have not, depending upon who ends up there in my seat. If I get reelected, then there'll be 4 who have tenure on the council, and we could absorb 2 or 3 new council members and keep things going forward. I think it's important for the people to know that. On this Monsanto deal, for example, that was 2 years in the making. In the final few weeks of it, the Monsanto executives came in and met with the council because we had not been meeting with them prior to this. We didn't post it. We didn't do large groups. We kept it small because it had to be privacy until the deal was finally consummated. But one of the things they told me was we're a little concerned, the legal in St. Louis, a little concerned about, well, what if we pull the trigger on this deal and then the council doesn't support it and we don't get the annexation? And I said, well, what if I fly as a mayor pro tem? What if I fly to St. Louis and meet with your legal and just let them know we want this deal, we're going to make it happen? They grinned and said, that's what we need to know right now. You don't need to go. So we were able to go ahead and finalize that deal, and next week we break ground on that property, a $142 million investment in Lubbock, 500,000 square foot warehouse being built. We've got other companies that are looking to come to Lubbock, but they're going to pause if we elect 4 new council members. They're going to say, okay, what's going to happen to the city? Are they going to be in favor of growth? They're going to be in favor in helping us get here? Because they saw what happened at Amarillo, and that's been a train wreck when they elected a new majority.
Do you think, is that a comment on some of the others, and including your opponent, that you don't think are pro-growth?
No, it's not a comment on anybody.
Okay. It's
a comment on the situation. Because the businesses will look to see what's going on. 4 new council members, that's a new quorum. That's a new majority. They're going to step back and wait for a little while. At the presentation that McDougall's and the Rager Dykes Auto Group did last week, they really put things in perspective. They put together a beautiful, beautiful video promoting the city of Lubbock. But what they're explaining now is we're really not in competition so much anymore with Amarillo or Abilene or Big Spring. We're now in competition with Dallas, with Houston, with San Antonio. We've gotten to that level where we've got some of the big players who are now starting to look at Lubbock, like Monsanto, relocating their cottonseed business here. So I think, no, it's not a comment on any of my opponent or anybody else. It's just a comment on the situation. It will slow things down significantly until the new council has time to establish who they are and what they're for. My fear is we might lose some business during that time.
When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Lubbock City Councilman Jim Gerlt, seeking re-election, District 4, Lubbock City Council. We'll be right back here on the Chad Hasty Show, News Talk 790 KFYO. One of the issues that we're visiting with Lubbock City Councilman Jim Gerlt, seeking re-election in District 4, one of the issues, Councilman, that has continued to pop up through your race, the mayoral race, I think just about every single Lubbock City Council race that is out there, is the Omni building.
Yes.
If I believe I'm correct here, you are in support and continue to be in support of turning the Omni building, now called Citizens Tower, into the new City Hall, moving as many city facilities and city offices as possible under that one building.
Absolutely.
You've been criticized, the entire council's been criticized by others who are running in the different races for this purchase and saying instead we need to throw it to the voters. What is your comment on that?
Ever since I've been on the council, we've been talking about 2 things. Number 1, a new police station. Where do we put it? Number 2, what are we going to do about the Omni? How do we correct that? We have looked at that thing every which way that you can possibly come at. Of course, we were assessing fines against the previous owner. He just ignored that. Not having any property in Lubbock that we could seize other than that, there wasn't a whole lot we could do with him. A lot of people said, well, you should have condemned it and torn it down. What they don't realize, when you go through a condemnation process, then you have to go to the appraisal price of that property, which was $4 million. And then you have to destroy it. Well, he wouldn't have destroyed it. So we would have torn it down and placed a lien on that property. All right, we would have paid $4 million to get it. It would have cost somewhere between $12 and $16 million to demolish that. So we're looking at a piece of property in downtown Lubbock that has a lien against it of somewhere between $16 and $18 million. That would have always been green space in downtown Lubbock. That's been a big issue in stopping downtown redevelopment. It's been a public safety issue. We have looked at that every month I've been on the council. We've tried so many different ways. Finally realized the only way we're going to resolve this is if we get control of it. So we put $100 down earnest money, went in and did some feasibility studies. We had engineers walk through the building, determined that it is structurally solid, something could be done with it. So then we completed the purchase of it, thinking from day one that we talked about it being the police station and decided that wasn't a good use for it, but being a city hall could be a good use for it. And our old city hall then could be retrofitted to serve as the police station because the bones of that building are both very solid. Now, what a lot of people don't realize, the new DPS station out at the business park cost $48 million to build. We gave them the land to get them to come here and build that. A new police station would have been somewhere in the neighborhood of $48 to $50 to $60 million. We probably looked at 24 pieces of property where we could possibly place it. Every one of them was going to come with a price tag of anywhere from $8 to $12 million. You start putting up all the numbers together, you're getting around $60, $65, $70 million for a new police station, and that doesn't do anything with the Omni. So we had an opportunity to come in, purchase the Omni, retrofit it, put our city hall over there, bring in some of the, stop paying lease on so much land. We're paying over about $900,000 a year in rental property. Now, part of that's the Go-To-Key Library, which I hope we can purchase in a couple of years. But we have an opportunity to retrofit that, aid in downtown redevelopment, retrofit the old city hall and turn it into a police station for roughly what would it cost for just a new police station. It may cost a little bit more. There's some things involved in that. Now, what I find interesting on this, on those who are criticizing us and attacking us for doing that without putting out for a vote of the public, I have an article here from the AJ. It was printed Friday, April 30th, 2010. The Lubbock Independent School District purchased the property at A. Ivy's Transmission Service next to the district's administrative office for $250,000, and the property east of Lubbock High School, formerly occupied by Calvary Baptist, for $500,000. Trustee Steve Massengale, chairman of the school board's facilities committee, said the purchases were strategic ones. The plans are to demolish both buildings, he said. But Trustee Chris Comer, who voted against the purchase later, called it a poor decision. We're paying way too much for A. Ivy's, about 3 times what it's worth, Comer said. The likely use of the property will be a park, which is a non-performing asset that will not help educate children. Comer said the transmission repair shop's an ugly building, but added that purchasing the property was not justified just because it was an eyesore. Just because I don't like my next-door neighbor's home, I don't pay 2.5 times what it's worth just to get rid of it. If someone wants to borrow $250,000 to buy the property, no commercial lender would make that loan, Comer said. And then down here toward the end of the article, Massengale said he thought the purchase was money well spent for the enhancement of Lubbock High. No finalized plan has been made for using the property, he said, but he anticipates the 2020 committee, a citizens committee currently analyzing the facilities, will have suggestions. So, that's what they did. And was that a good decision? I don't argue with what they did. I mean, that's fine. They did that. The difference, we didn't pay 2.5 times what the building's worth. We paid less than a third of the appraised value. We also are aiding in the downtown redevelopment, and it's absolutely essential that we revitalize downtown. During the Imagine Lubbock Together town hall meetings that they were having, every area of the city, when they brought citizens together for public comment, said the city has got to put a stake, got to make an investment in downtown redevelopment. We've done 2 of them. We're putting the utility lines underground. We've got control of the old Omni building. We're going to turn it from a huge liability into a great asset for the city of Lubbock.
Councilman Jim Gerlt in studio. Final break. When we come back, more to get into with Lubbock City Councilman Jim Gerlt seeking re-election in District 4. Councilman Jim Gerlt in studio discussing his re-election bid for Lubbock City Council in District 4. And, Councilman, I wanted to bring up the issue of the smoking ban, because this is an issue where obviously I disagreed with at least how you handled it at first.
Sure.
With the smoking ban. Earlier you brought up you're a conservative. Many, including myself, viewed the smoking ban as an attack on private property rights, which is not a conservative principle.
Sure.
Conservatives believe it's your business. You do with it as you want. The government doesn't need to get even more involved in your business. Looking back on the smoking ban, and you did change your vote on that, but then you later on said that it should be up for a public vote. How would you handle it again if this issue comes before the city council?
What I told the Heart Association was, in theory, I can support it, but I've got to see the ordinance. But I didn't say that on the radio, but I told them that. When I finally saw the ordinance and had a chance to read it, I thought, oh my goodness, this is so different than what was first introduced. I also need to understand the number of people who came in and asked us to do that. They were begging for that ordinance to be passed. But I read the ordinance and saw this is far overreaching. I listened to my constituents, and they said, we don't support this. And so what we did A lot of people say, well, you didn't vote against it. No, we did a better job of killing it. Had we voted it down, they could have rewritten it, brought it back the next month or the next session. They could keep bringing it back. By tabling it indefinitely, it takes 4 votes to bring it off the table. There are not 4 votes to bring it off the table. That was a more effective way to dispose of it than just continuing to vote it down.
But this group will be back at some point, or a group like them will come back and attempt another smoking ban in Lubbock. So how would you address that? Because you said that when they first approached you, you were in favor of a ban, but just not the ban that they eventually wrote. So where's the line for you?
Oh, I think the line is it needs to be the property owners who make that decision. I really do. And that's the reason why I'm also have a new resolution on for this week about the annexation. I think the annexation going forward is a good thing, but so many people down there don't want to be annexed. So I'm looking at a way to carve them out because I want to respect their property rights.
So if another ordinance regarding whatever, whether it be vaping, whether it be smoking ban, whether it be small animals allowed, whatever it is, you say it's a business owner's decision.
I supported the public's right to own chickens.
That's true, you did. That's true. Councilman Jim Gerlt, appreciate you coming in. We'll get you back in studio as the campaign continues.
Thank you very much.
All right. Tell folks where they can view your website, by the way.
JimforLubbock.com.
All right. Thank you very much.